Huge thanks to these stores and teams for sponsoring my trip to ARG Nationals. It's a really awesome opportunity. I wouldn't have been able to do it without the help of these guys. So please go down to the description, find the links, check them out, show them some love. I'd really appreciate it. These guys all put in a lot of work to help get me there. So I'm really appreciative of it. So with that, let's get on to the content. Hey there guys, DMO73 here, and we are bringing you the feature match for the week. I'm showing you off some of the new Twilight Wanderer rulers. Paul is playing an Alice Lady of the Lake Fairies list, 4-color, and I am playing a mono black Dark Alice Shadows list. The Dark Alice list is all about stat negs, and board state, kind of kills with not really damage, just forcing destruction and reducing stats in order to make the plays happen. So Paul rolled a 3 to my 2, so Paul's obviously going to be going first. So let's see how it goes. So he hits that Gusting Skies at the top and plays a light sprite, or light fairy. Tap for my first stone. I hit the little red, the pure stone. I call black. Darkness. Pull out an Alice's Shadow Warrior, or Dark Alice's Shadow Warrior, and I play a bow. So this is the first part of my established bit, because Dark Alice's Shadow Warrior can do a -2/-2, and then bow can hit something for 400 damage. So the whole point is, with this setup, I can even kill a Lancelot, because I can use Dark Alice to put him down to a 4/4 and then shoot him with a bow. So Paul flips over that Fairies Memoria and reveals the Void Fairy. There's my little dog. But then the play here he actually should have done was he could have played that Flame Sprite and that Void Sprite by using the green-white stone to play the Void Sprite, and then the Fairies Memoria to play Flame Sprite, and then he could have played that Protection of the Fairies on the Flame Sprite. Just a simple little switch there, but it's not terribly huge. So I swing in for 3 and then just pass my turn. You see that another Fairies Memoria, so get that Flame Sprite in his hand to start getting revealed. Flame Sprite comes out. So he's got that double Protection of the Fairies. But I do have the 2 stones, so for those of you who've seen my Mono Dark Vlad list that I played before, this list, the Dark Alice list kind of has that same sort of feel, but it has a more early game presence for damage. So right now Paul's staring down that bow, which isn't really a huge issue if he just puts on the Protection of the Fairies, because it bumps up the back end. So he uses Flame Strike's effect to try to burn my Shadow Warrior. In response, I banish Shadow Warrior to give his Light Sprite a -2/-2. And then I don't really know why he swings in there. I think about bowing it, but I actually decide not to, because I realize that I'm not going to take any damage, because it actually has 0 attack. And I'd rather save my bow for something else. So the Protection of the Fairies comes out, and he swings in for 5. And then I'm thinking, I can't do the next damage because he can just banish with Protection. But so what I do is I ended up using just Stunning to Death on his Void Fairy. So he passes to me, and I tap for stone. So kudos to Paul, this is his first time trying out the deck. It's the first time either of these decks really got to get used, so outside of like, you know, theory crafting in my head. So I go to 3 stones and I pass for turn. I'm sitting on spot removal in my hands, and I want to try to force him to kind of use up his supplies. I know that I'm expecting a Vivian soon, so I'm going to try to eliminate the Vivian if I can. So he swings it with the Light Sprite, shoot it with a bow, swings it with Flame Sprite. Thinking about whether or not I want to kill it, so I decided to just take it. Mistap the middle thing there. So yeah, the fairy list. The list is actually the one that you've seen if you watch Force of Will US. Is one that Matt Cosmore used, but I'm using Alice instead of Reflect Refrain just because I wanted to show off Alice. So just as a heads up. So before the untap, I use Dark Alice's effect to exile 3 cards from Paul's graveyard. So now I know that I can deactivate whenever I want. And then I've used 3. I'm feeling pretty comfortable, and I have some spot removal in my hand. So after I tap for stone, I use 3 to play Schrodinger, which actually puts me back up to 5 will. So I have 2 will left over to be able to play something like Stoning to Death or Dark Purge or something like that. And this way it sets me up for getting that pump up from Schrodinger for when I do eventually deactivate. So he does play that Vivian. I knew the Vivian was coming. So I'm prepared for her in a sense. So he uses a protection of fairies on her. So there's a misplay right there, just so you guys know. Vivian will proc her own ability to pump up all fairies +2/+2 when she enters the field. I learned about that after this game. So what actually happens is that that Flame Strike shouldn't have been killed by the bow. It should have actually had 500 defense, and I should have taken that damage. End up using Alice during the upkeep to exile the Flame Sprite, so I'm up to 4 cards exiled by Dark Alice. I tap for another stone. I see those 2. I see the green stone and the Moonshade stone up, so I go for just a 2-drop Dark Faria rather than going for the full awakening cost, and I'm glad that I did, because there comes the Zeeks from Paul. And at that point, I just pass. Now, something I could have done differently is I could have easily Stoning to Death the Vivian during Paul's turn. I had 2 will to be able to do it, and he would have been able to tap in response to make anything happen. But I just messed that up a little bit. I'm feeling fine though, because I have 4 will still up, and I got plenty of responses. So during the upkeep, he uses Vivian to flash in a Light Sprite, and therefore will proc his Vivian for the turn, so +2/+2 to all fairies. Then he plays that Flame Sprite, which gets him another +2/+2 to all of his fairies. But what I do is actually in response to the summon of Flame Sprite, I use Endless Night, and he tries to use Zeeks. And so in response to that, then I use, because I know I'm going to take some damage, I use Unseen Pressure on the Light Sprite, because it only has 400 attack, so it will still die. So Endless Night will whiff, but the Stat Neg will not. So the -2/-2 is still present, but that doesn't really matter because Vivian gives them all a +2/+2. So essentially they all have just an extra 200 attack for the turn. Which is not going to be good for me because I'm going to take some damage. So 400. Oh, Should have been a little more. Down to... Oh wait, no, because yeah. So I should actually have taken 200 more damage there. So pardon me on that, because Vivian was a 700, and then no, that would make sense. I should have taken 1100 damage, and I did. 700 from Viv and 400 from Flame Sprite. So because it creates a cloud effect. So I go ahead and exile 2 more cards, or 3 more cards, putting me up to 7 cards total exiled. I tap for a stone. So I'm feeling pretty in control here. Paul only has 1 card in his hand that he just drew into. I've got 4 wills still up to be able to make plays, and I've got plenty of cards in my hand. So Paul's thinking about J-activating this turn because he can't actually do it. So he swings in for 2, and I take the damage. And he swings in for 5, and I take the damage there, or 7, I guess. And then down to 18. So I should have taken 200 more damage. So I should actually be at 16. Just caught that now. So in response to the judgment, what I do is I actually do Stoning to Death and Dark Purge to kill off his 2 fairies, because Alice untaps all the fairies. So I want to just kill both of his fairies in response to the untap. The Dark Alice list is definitely about laying traps for your opponent and forcing them to kind of overcommit unexpectedly. So in this position, I've done exactly that. Paul is tapped out. His J Ruler can't attack this turn because he doesn't have Swiftness with Levitine, and I'm immediately at a point where I can just, crack back at him really, really hard if I want to. I literally have free reign to do what I want. And with Dark Alice, the fact that she has target attack and stuff like that, I could simply exile 3 more cards, flip for nothing, and then like you're about to see do. So like exile 3 cards, any 3, doesn't really matter. Go up to 10 cards exiled. Oh, I decided to tap for stone actually. Feeling pretty comfortable in it, I guess. Sitting at a lot of will up and passing turn to Paul. So see that 1-drop Sprite, draws and reveals. And reminding of how he's supposed to do it. So he reveals the Grand Cross. It's not a fairy, so it just stays on the top of his deck. So he puts a protection of the fairy on the water sprite, and he swings at me for 9, which I just allow him to get the damage in. So I should actually be down to 7. Just keep that in mind. At the end of his turn, at the end of his turn, I'm gonna flash in a 0, because I want to be able to put some extra damage on board next turn. So I'm gonna exile. I thought about exiling just a random card, but at this point it really doesn't matter. I've hit 10 stones, or 10 cards in Paul's RFG area, so Schrodinger will now give Dark Alice 500, 500, and Swiftness, and target attack, which he already has target attack. So Dark Alice's enter effect is when it resolves, you pick a number and destroy all resonators with that level. So I pick 1, kill the fairy. I can immediately just do the God's Art because I have will to burn at this point, which puts a permanent -2/-2 to his side of the board and lets me get a Schrodinger from out in the deck. So now suddenly Dark Alice is 19/19 with Swiftness and target attack, and Paul has a -2 to his entire board. So like at this point, 0 could just crash into Dark Alice and kill her. But I'm actually swinging into Paul's face for 7, or for 19, putting him down to 16, and then I'm going to swing in for 7 with the 0. Looking at my hand, I know I have a 0 in my hand to be able to stop Dark Alice, or Alice, so swing in for another 7 to tie it up to 9-9. I know that if he did draw into Zeke's, that I'd be in pretty big trouble, so I'd go ahead, but I know for a fact that he's drawing into Grand Cross, so because of the water sprite, so I'm not terribly concerned, and I know for a fact that I'll be able to flash in my 0 in my hand in order to be able to block his Alice. So I'd rather go for the damage at this point. So it plays the Grand Cross. The only resonator on the field is 0, so it will get killed. I was expecting that. Actually, it gets removed from the game, not sent to my graveyard. Then he gets to do God's Art for 2 less cost this turn. So he does so, pulls out Excalibur, and does a +2/+2 to his own board, which essentially just negates my -2/-2. Honestly, that's why I think that Dark Alice's God's Art is straight better than Fairy Alice, because it affects your opponent's board. It doesn't regard, so he literally just undid my God's Art, which is not what you want to be doing with a God's Art. So what I do in response to the attack from Fairy Alice, I flash in the 0, and then I use Grubalesta to give Fairy Alice a -2 to her defense, so it will be a trade, because she'll only have 700 defense. And then in response to that, Paul just banishes to give Fairy Alice Imperishable, but he knows at that point that there's nothing he can do. So he just scoops, and we move into game 2. So I was debating whether or not I wanted to mulligan any there, but I actually ended up deciding just to keep my hand. Felt pretty comfortable with it, knowing that I was on the draw. So Paul's going first, hits that Fairy Stone, reveals a Wind Sprite, and plays it. Pretty great first turn. If he has a Vivian in his hand, he's set up to do really well. He'll be set up to be able to play his Vivian next turn, which is really good for Fairies. I play Escorta Dark Alice because I'm wondering if there's a Vivian in his hand, but unfortunately he had no such luck with that. He just had the Void Sprite, but I see that he's got double Zeeks and Grand Cross, so that's good for me because now I know that summoning spells are going to be harder for me to resolve, so I gotta be careful about that. So he uses Wind Sprite to put in his Light Sprite. I play a Jean, pointing out to Paul that he can only use the Fairies Memoria to produce green to play a fairy, so there's no way he was going to be able to play that Zeeks anyway, so that's why I was comfortable with that. So I play Jean, the Shadow Jean, and I played a Shadow Warrior. So this is a really good opening play because he does have something that's only a 2/2. So in Jean, when something on my opponent's side of the field dies, I get to tap something else on my opponent's side of the field. So right now, if he does try to make a play with like Vivian or something like that, I'll be able to use Shadow Warrior to kill his Wind Sprite and tap down the Vivian. That's my thought process there. So I'm thinking about whether or not I want to take the 200 damage. I say it's fine. In the grand scheme, 200 really isn't that important. I mean, you saw how fast I was able to tie the game back up. So hit the Little Red the Pure Stone, put it back on Darkness. I know there's that Zeke's, so in the sense I kind of want to bait it, but I'm trying to figure out how I want to do it. So swing in for 3 with Dark Alley Shadow Warrior. He allows the damage to go through. Swing in for 3 with Jean. Allows that to go through as well. So he's down at 34. Just realized that there it is. So normally I would try to leave Jean untapped or recovered so that, you know, she's less susceptible to being attacked. But I have 3 will and I have lots of protection in my hand in the form of spot removal. Plus Shadow Warrior, of course, so I'm feeling pretty secure. So you see there's that Vivian. So Vivian's gonna come out. All the fairies now have a pump bonus, which is not good. But there's only 2 fairies. I'm thinking about doing a response with Shadow Warrior before things get out of hand. But I decided not to. So he plays Grand. I explained to him the Grand. This is, I mean, you know, kudos to Paul for thinking it's. For trying the deck out. It's Grand Cross. What it does is it kills the thing on the field with the highest attack. So I remind him that he doesn't want to kill his own Vivian. So he actually just passes to me, which is a little unexpected. I was expecting a little bit more, but what I do is during the upkeep, I flash in a 0, which will automatically kill his Wind Sprite and then proc Joan so that she will tap down his Vivian. So now I can make some plays to be able to kill that Vivian. I know he's got that Zeke's, so I do the same thing that I did last game in that I baited out using a Dark Faria. And he uses the Zeke's to prevent the Dark Faria, so I've successfully baited out the Zeke's. I could play the other Dark Faria I have in my hand, but I'd rather leave it open for spot removal. So this is some tricky situation stuff that I do here. I could have flashed in 0 at the end of Paul's turn, but the thing is it wouldn't have killed anything because of the +2/+2 that Vivian gave everyone. So that's why I flashed it in the start of my turn. So I can't attack, but at least I was able to tap some stuff down. So I deal 300, and then I banish Shadow Warrior to kill his Light Sprite. Which will then proc Joan, and the reason why it kills it is because it already has -2/-2, so it's getting a -4/-4. Then I use Joan to kill the Void Sprite there, Mechanical Sprite, and then I reread Joan, and it's like, oh, I don't have to tap my own creatures. I thought Joan had to tap something, but it doesn't. Only has to tap my opponent's creatures. So with that, I pass. Again, I could have used Stoning to Death to get rid of the Viv. I feel like I should have. I I know that there's that Grand Cross on the field there in his hand. Honestly, I want to lay traps for Paul. That's the whole kind of point of the deck. So with shadows, it's just to lay traps. So Flame Sprite comes in, thinking about if I have a response to Flame Sprite. I say that Flame Sprite's good, so now everything is +2/+2. I'll use this Grand Cross, and this time it will eliminate my 0 because I have no way to make it the thing with less attack. It's tied for the highest attack, which will still work for Grand Cross. So he attempts to swing in on my Flame Sprite, or on my Joan of Arc with his Flame Sprite. In response, I pay 2 and use Dark Purge. And then that will use Joan of Arc to proc and tap down his Vivian. I feel like he was saving that Zeeks that he had in his hand. I know he has another Zeeks in his hand, so I feel like he was saving it for my summon that I'm going to do next turn if I do a summon. But again, I'm trying to keep things kind of smooth in that regard. I'm trying to kind of play around it and set traps and stuff like that. I could drop Stoning to Death right now, but I know he's got that Zeeks, so it's just gonna do nothing. So what I end up doing instead is I just have used 3 stones to exile 3 cards. So now Dark Atlas can flip anytime that I want. And then I swing it for 300 damage with Joan, putting him down to 24. See Paul draws into another Flames right there. Plays the Flames right. Swings in at my Joan. I say that's fine. Takes 900 from Vivian. Exile 2 more cards during my upkeep. Up to 5 cards exiled. So now if I have a Schrodinger on the field, at least she has the bonus to her attack and defense. So I play 1, pull out the other Gene, kind of baiting him to try and Zeeks it. He does not, he lets me go. So the Shadow's Memoria, when it comes out, I have Dark Atlas, but like when a Shadow enters my field, I have to give something minus 100 attack. So use Scorn of Dark Atlas to look at the Zeeks again, because I'd forgotten about it. So it was kind of a waste. But I play a bow, and then I pass back to Paul. So that 1 of Excalibur in his hand is the 1 of we play in the deck, so it's kind of unfortunate that I drew into it, because now he can't search for it with God's Art. So I'm sitting on 4, I believe 4 Open Will, 2 cards in my hand, a Dark Purge, and a Dark Faria. I know he's got that Zeeks, or I think an Endless Night, the Dark Faria, or something like that. But I do have the bow as well. So Endless Night still becomes a threat because of the -2/-2, since it is a separate effect. If I'm wrong about that, feel free to correct me down below, but they are separated by 2 halves of a sentence, and you resolve as much as possible. So Paul is definitely thinking about what he wants to do here. He knows what happened to him last time. He sees that I've got open well. He decides to go ahead and flip ahead of time. Let the flip happen, it's fine. He swings in for 2. Now that he's currently tapped out, when he moves into combat, or he tries to burn my Gene. So I, in response, pump up Gene to be 500, 500 with Little Red the Pure. So Vivian is still only 7-5 because she only gets procced when fairy resonators enter. Even though Atlas the Queen is a fairy, she will only get to be boosted to 7 or 5 or however much attack she has. Apparently can't count today. Oh yeah, so it's 500, so I'll only take 500 from that. So during the upkeep, I Endless Night. And get the Vivian off the board. So I have a Dark Purge and a 0 in my hand. But Jean's only 100 because of Endless Night. So we're swinging for 100 damage. And then I'm going to exile 3 cards, going up to a total of 8 cards exiled. I'm trying to get to 10 because I want to get that swiftness. I mean, it's just because the situation is in right now. Typically with what I have in my hand, I probably wouldn't worry about that. If I was playing in a different matchup. But I know that I'll be able to flash in 0 and kill that Fairy Atlas. He has the Zeeks, but I'm not terribly worried about it. Plays the Excalibur. I can also just Dark Purge Dark Alice and still kill her that way. So he plays the Excalibur, which gives Fairy Alice +1/+1 for every Resonator he controls. So she's currently a 10/10. Now she's an 11/11 because of the Light Sprite. And now at this point, I know he doesn't have Zeeks. He can't play Zeeks, so I'm feeling pretty comfortable there. And then he uses the Fairy Memoria effect to pump up the attack of Flame Sprite by 200, making him a 400, and attempts to swing in at my face. In response to that, I use 0, flash in 0, and then I shoot Flame Sprite with a bow, because it has -2/-2, so it'll still die, and then Jean will proc and I'll kill Light Sprite. So he's thinking about whether or not he wants to swing in, tries to kill the Jean, and I just block with 0. I need to keep that Jean around for as long as possible. So use Jean to crash in to the Light Sprite, kill it, and I spend 2 to exile those last 2 cards in his grave, going up to 7. I J activate. So this is like my big moment to push back. So I use J activate. I declare 4 so that nothing on the field will die, and then I do immediately a God's Art. So -2/-2 to Paul's board, and I get Schrodinger. So he's got only 1 card in his hand. I know what it is, or I think I know what it is. 1 or 2 cards in his hand. Fairy Alice is now only a 7/7. I've got swiftness and target attack, And I used the 3 will, including the will from Schrodinger, to pull out Elizabeth to better set me up for the next turn too. So I use the 14/14 to swing into Fairy Alice. He banishes for imperishable, but at the end, really, he knows it doesn't do anything. So he's just going to, at this point, so you'll see in a second, he's going to draw for his turn and then he's going to scoop. So, because he's staring down a very, very impregnable board at this point. Because at most he can play, you know, the Fairy, but he's staring down Elizabeth, a Joan of Arc with a bow. So he's got nothing to do. So there you have it, guys. That is Fairy Shadows, or Dark Alice Shadows versus Fairy Alice. Let me know what you thought about the list. The match list will be up this Saturday. Go ahead and like, comment, and subscribe. And until next time, this is DMO73 signing off.